everyone. My name is Lesli Hoey. I'm an associate professor of urban and regional planning, and I do research on the strategies and the effects of grassroots movements in trying to scale up their innovations to move the alternative food movement into larger scales, and also when governments are excited about trying to do more progressive things around food systems, how their policies actually get implemented on the ground and the impacts that they have. I do most of my research here in Michigan and in Bolivia. I have the pleasure of introducing Shelly Miller tonight. Shelly is the director for the program in the environment that probably many of you students are a part of. She's associate professor also here in the School of Environment and Sustainability, and she has a relationship also with the Department of Civil and Environmental Engineering. And she uses, in her own words, life cycle assessment and scenario modeling to identify environmental problems before they occur. So she's done a whole gamut of really interesting research, including looking at everything from biofuel and bioenergy technologies to plastic waste to autonomous vehicles. She didn't say exactly what her favorite food was, but she said, I do make some killer black pepper and pistachio cookies, which she made up, which I'm really excited to try someday. And the title of her talk tonight is, Can Meal Kit Services Actually Be Green?
Thanks so much. So, show of hands, who has ever used a meal kit? And who has ever in the audience thought of using a meal kit but never actually bought one because it seems really wasteful? And is there anyone here who's thinking, what's a meal kit? A couple of folks. So if you don't have experience with meal kits, what these are, they are pre-portioned ingredients that cook a specific recipe that gets shipped directly to consumers' doors. There's two motivations for my study. First was, I had a whole lot of friends who were saying, I really like this idea of meal kits. You don't have to think about meal prep or what you're going to cook. Meals come straight to your door, but at the end of the day, I have so much plastics and packaging and I just feel guilty. And my work, and a number of us here in the Center for Sustainable Systems and Seas, is really looking at the whole picture and the whole systems of not just what you see in front of you, but the whole life cycle and the whole system, and seeing whether or not something is actually as bad as it might seem. But my real research, or another big piece of my research, is really looking at how systems transform over time and what the environmental impacts of things will be as they evolve in order to prevent them. So the thing that I'm really, really interested about is how food systems across the globe are going to change, particularly when we talk about developing countries. And when we talk about developing countries, are they going to move from wet markets to major supermarkets like we have in the US? Or is there leapfrogging potential of direct-to-consumer meal services that actually leapfrog brick and mortar? And is that actually a direction we want to promote in terms of sustainability? So the first thing we have to know is, are these meal kits actually better than shopping at a grocery store? And if so, by how much? And so we sent some undergrads out to the grocery store. And we had them go online. And we had them subscribe to some Blue Apron, get the recipes, go to a grocery store, try to replicate the meals as closely as they possibly could. And so they did things like they weighed the packaging, and they weighed the plastics, and they measured out all of the ingredients, and they learned how to cook chicken for the first time. They had a great time with this, and what they found is a finding that concerns many of us, which is meal kits actually have lower life cycle emissions than the exact same meal sourced from the grocery store. And I know so many of you are thinking, how can that possibly be true? I will say this, the grocery store meals did have less packaging. There was more packaging associated with the meal kits themselves, but when we look at the overall life cycle results, the meal kits actually had fewer emissions. And here's what it looks like. Now, I will say this is just looking at greenhouse gas emissions. We looked at a suite of different environmental impact metrics, and this is just looking at one meal for clarity. And so what you see here, and I think the big key takeaway, meal kits is on the left, groceries on the right, showing the proportion of overall emissions associated with it. It's not what's in the packaging It's not the packaging itself, it's what's in the packaging that matters most. So what you can see here over in pink is the packaging. It's 9% of grocery store, it's 10% of our meal kits. But the green is actually the chicken and the ingredients and the agricultural emissions that go into our meals. And the food waste is the yellow and orange. Particularly, I'll point out in the grocery, all of the distribution, retailing, and all of the things that happen within the food system before you see the food itself. We tend to focus on the other third of the emissions, the packaging, the looking at sort of the fairly minor details. Is it okay? I've heard so many people saying, but what if I compost? Composting is great, but it's not going to eliminate those other 2/3 of meal kit emissions. So I'll highlight what the previous two speakers said. It depends on the food itself. Here's the full results of the study in pairs associated with meal kits and grocery stores. This is cheeseburger, right? So it doesn't matter how you get your food, whether it's shipped to your door, what the actual packaging types and amounts are. It matters whether or not there is what the actual protein is. So we did another study, which is looking at institutional change. I know zero waste events are big and we should absolutely do them, but they constitute a rounding error when compared to if you did the exact same institutional event and switched from beef to veggie, or just were more conscious about food waste or portioning sizes overall. The middle is reducing just the portion size by 25%. And so that's all I have, but I want to acknowledge the students who actually did this work. Thank you.